Hello and welcome to one of our onshore wind conversations. The UK government has decided to open up onshore wind in England after a de facto ban of some years. Of course, onshore wind projects have continued to be developed in Wales and Scotland, but we thought it would be really useful to get some experts together and to talk about onshore wind, particularly with those experts who, in some cases, dealt with the first wave of onshore wind some 25 odd years ago. There's a lot of expertise. So for those developers who are looking at projects going forward in England, maybe we've got some thoughts for you to consider. I'm delighted to be joined today on the subject of real estate by my colleagues from the real estate team, Will Woodall.
Hello.
And Tom Perret.
Hi there.
Hi, both of you. So let's get straight down to it. I mentioned the first wave of onshore wind some 25 years ago, Will, probably 30 years ago. But what's changed since then in terms of dealing with landowners if you're a developer? Because obviously it was a new industry in those days. It's now a mature industry. What are the things that have changed if you're acting for developers?
Yeah, thanks, Ross. I mean, it's a really exciting time in the market, as you say, with it going ahead again in England, and it also will ramp up in Wales, even though, as you say, it's been continuing. I would say the biggest difference is that projects are much larger, and so most of the projects we see are multi-landowner projects. I mean, we are still working on single turbine and smaller deals, but with much larger, more efficient turbines, larger swept areas, and often you need a larger area and several landowners. So there's a lot more to think about with bringing those landowners together, with engaging with them and their advisors to make sure that the deals can go through effectively. I'd say that's the biggest difference.
Okay, so you're touching largely on the difference in projects and the difference in size, Tom. Would you echo that?
Yeah, entirely. And it's not just the size of the projects, but as Will's touched on, it's the size of the turbines themselves. And one of the things that is key to keep in mind when you are developing a project of that size is actually how you're going to get the turbines to the site. So from a legal perspective, from real estate, it's not just the site of the turbines themselves or even the cable route, but it's along the access way as well.
Okay. And can I come back to changes? I mean, obviously it's a more mature industry now. The landowners can understand what they're going to get from a renewable energy project, whether it's wind, solar, and so forth. Land agents probably advising landowners, and developers are much more in the know about that. Equally, at the same time, I guess the subsidies for onshore wind have fallen away somewhat. You don't have the renewables obligation anymore. So has the whole sort of rental position or what landowners get changed? Have the demands changed?
Yes, they have. And the other thing I'd add to that is the more hybrid projects with BESS involved, with a battery storage to capture and deal with that intermittency that we hear people criticising for wind, even though the wind does blow most of the time, but with a BESS. So I think the main model has continued with in how rents are done for wind, but with a BESS involved as well, that creates a lot more complication.
That does add a huge level of complexity actually in terms of the commercial arrangements and what you're rentalising. So yeah, that's an added complexity that we haven't had to contend with before when you're looking at co-located projects.
Yeah, and I guess are landowners more aware that their sites are particularly valuable now to project developers, perhaps more than they were when wind first started up?
I'd say so. I think landowners in general seem to be very well advised these days, both in respect of legal advisors and land agents doing very good deals for their clients ultimately. And we are lucky enough to act both for landowners and for developers. But certainly one of the key things that we've seen working relatively well in recent projects is where there are multi-landowner deals where they've been represented by either a single agent or a single solicitor, because that can streamline the process quite significantly.
I think there's probably also, I mean, I'm not the expert, I've certainly seen perhaps a hardening in some cases from the developers to turn around to landowners sometimes when deals are on the cusp, to turn around and say, look, we're only ever collectively going to make this work if the project gets built. So we can argue about all sorts of things, but ultimately from a landowner perspective, what you want to see is a project that's actually going to come to fruition. So you can argue all about the options and fees and so forth, but But where you're really going to make the returns, I guess, is if the project gets constructed. So you've got to have a laser-like focus on that as a landowner.
The deliverability of the project, and that's something that the developer is keen to say. And also from the landowner side, they can't, as an advisor, you can't just keep asking for more and more. You have to do a fair deal which reflects this is a partnership between the parties going forward. But you can't, even though wind sites are more unusual than solar sites. So in the solar days, we got used to the fact that and with the BESS, that if it's near enough a grid connection, or if it's in the right area, there's a bit of flexibility where it goes. A good wind site with the constraints on wind and not being near dwellings is a very good site. But having said that, I totally agree that there's no subsidy available now. The economics, are potentially more challenging for developers. So they have to make sure that it's a fair deal, and that you can't keep asking for more as a landowner.
Yeah. I suppose technically there is a subsidy available in the contract for difference, but I completely agree with your point in that you're not guaranteed to get that, because you're having to bid in, and that in itself is a sensitive bid in according to the price of the build out, which then falls back onto the economics. Okay, so one of the things that all developers fret about, quite understandably, is the speed in which it takes to get the real estate and to get the land over the line, because that in effect then triggers their ability to go for planning, go for consenting, get the project built out. We've grappled with that over the years, haven't we, in terms of speeding up processes with all the real estate transactions that we've done in renewables. But top tips in terms of dealing with landowners and trying to speed the process through, what would you say?
There's quite a few approaches that we've seen, some more successful than others, but ultimately early engagement with the landowners and key stakeholders throughout the development or across the development is important way before they get into the solicitor's hands. Making sure that things have been well thought through and discussed in detail with agents is important, so that ultimately we know what terms we're trying to document when we are documenting the agreements. But as mentioned earlier, in terms of single point of advice, if you do have multiple landowners, contributing land towards the development of a project, then actually having a single firm or a single solicitor acting for all of them can make that job of negotiation certainly a lot quicker, which obviously saves in cost.
Yeah, I'd also add to that just to remember the practicalities of this as a working farm, or you're dealing with individuals and you're dealing with people reflecting what they are after, and whether they are it's a forestry area, for instance, or whether it's a working livestock farm. The early engagement applies for that as well, and reflecting the practicalities that will continue for the farmer or the landowner. And along with that is agreeing plans as early as possible. That would be my top tip, and my plea, or the thing that makes life easiest for us, is the earlier that plans are settled with the areas that are required, the areas that restrictions are required over, and any access routes and cable routes. We know that sometimes isn't possible at an early stage in a development because it will still be being firmed up. But one of the biggest problem points which causes tension during the negotiation is where the area that the developer wants to take rights over is too large, or too large for the landowner's opinion, and so they don't want to put restrictions on areas where there might be a working farmyard, or where they might want to develop, or where they might want to develop their own project.
Yeah, there's definitely need to strike a balance between what's really required for the flexibility for the development versus the practicality of actually operating a farm or a forestry in the meantime.
And I guess I'd probably add to that, you've been polite enough not to say it, but here's a blatant sell, and that is, if you're going to do that as a developer, if you're going to enter land arrangements, make sure that if you're going to document them, that the lawyers, whether it's the landowner's lawyers or your own lawyers, have done it before, because there's a lot of learnings out there from previous onshore wind projects. Tom, Will, thank you very much. That's been really fascinating. Thank you. If you'd like to find out more about what we do in this area, then feel free to get in touch with Will or Tom or myself, and we are happy to speak to you. If you would like to know more about all of the onshore wind conversations, they will all be up on our website or on our social media channels. Thanks.